Have you ever thought they were indifferent, that your departure was just a fleeting breeze in an avoidance life? Today, I'm about to reveal a secret. When the avoidant loses the one person who truly understood them, they don't just feel abandoned, they feel as if their entire world is collapsing behind the wall they built. From the very moment you fall silent, instead of reacting with anger or reproach, a silent but overwhelming storm begins to rise within them. They're tormented by unspoken questions. Why didn't you come back this time? What did I do wrong? Could I have been so unbearable that they left me forever? Don't mistake their calm exterior. They're experts at hiding their pain, but beneath that armor of silence lies a heart in pieces. Every moment without you is another shard of trust shattered, and those shards accumulate into a terrifying fear. The fear of losing the chance to be truly understood. Imagine being the only person who ever saw past their defensive walls, who patiently navigated their emotional barriers to reach their core. Now, picture them slipping from your grasp. It's not that they're running away, they're paralyzed by regret. They want to call you, to explain, but their throat tightens, their mind races, and they don't know where to begin. And that's precisely what they cannot handle, your absence when you were the compass guiding them through the maze of emotions. Without you, they are lost. Not because they lack strength, but because they've never learned to face themselves alone. In this article, we'll delve into the psychological mechanisms and defense systems of the avoidant, uncover why they drown in chaos when they lose the one person who truly got them, and how we can open a path to healing for both of you. Brace yourself, because the truth behind that wall might just make you see yourself in a whole new light. At first, when your messages stopped coming, they breathed a secret sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had finally been lifted from their shoulders. No more gentle prodding for emotional honesty, no more well-meaning but suffocating check-ins, demanding they explain feelings they've long since buried beneath layers of deflection. In that initial silence, the avoidant experiences a rare sense of safety. The implicit rule-book of the relationship has been rewritten, and for once it feels like you're speaking their language of distance. They convince themselves that you've finally gotten it, that you understand their need to retreat inside their own skin, free from the expectation of emotional labor. It's a heady reward for all the years they spent perfecting the art of withdrawal proof in their minds that they can coexist in a bond without ever sacrificing their hard-won autonomy. Yet as the hours turn into days, the veneer of relief begins to fracture. The avoidant's nervous system, once lulled by the absence of demands, stirs into wakefulness. They find themselves drawn back to the digital breadcrumbs you left behind, a story uploaded at dawn, an old photo liked on a whim. Each tiny interaction feels like a puzzle piece they didn't know was missing, and they become both detective and voyeur, piecing together your silence with furtive glances. That initial calm dissolves into a curious tension, and they realize that the same silence they thought would comfort them is now echoing more loudly than any frantic plea ever could. Their behavior shifts in ways that feel both deliberate and uncontrolled. They scroll through your feed at odd hours, as if hoping to discover a clue that will unlock the door between you two. Yet they never comment directly, preferring instead to leave a cryptic, "Hey, hope you're doing well," in the dust of a months-old chat thread. This half-hearted outreach masks a deeper emotional pull. They crave reassurance that you still exist beyond the edge of their bubble, but fear that any direct approach will shatter the fragile safety they've constructed. Their words arrive diluted, tinged with guarded optimism, just enough to test the waters, but never enough to reveal the storm of longing beneath. In psychological terms, what you're witnessing is the collapse of their defensive strategy. Avoidants have trained themselves to equate intimacy with threat, governing proximity through strategic withdrawal, in order to maintain what they perceive as self-preservation. But when you refuse to bridge the gap, you turn their own tactic against them. The shield of silence becomes a mirror that reflects their deepest wound and unspoken fear of irreversible abandonment. No amount of self-soothing or rationalization can fully quell the disquiet in their vagal tone. The autonomic nervous system interprets your absence not as relief but as a silent ambush, triggering an undercurrent of panic just below the threshold of consciousness. Despite their reputation for emotional coolness, avoidants are wired to notice patterns of connection and disconnection with hypersensitivity. Every unreturned text is cataloged, every unacknowledged story viewed. each one adding to a growing dossier of uncertainty. They begin replaying your past interactions in their mind, moments when they slipped into detachment and you graciously gave them space, times when they tested your boundaries and you patiently accommodated. The irony is devastating. The very tolerance that once seduced them into comfort now haunts them as evidence that you were more secure, more self-assured, more willing to hold the relational tension than they ever were. And so, after a silent vigil spent oscillating between relief and regret, they muster the courage to reach out in the most avoidant way possible. A text so casual it feels like it couldn't hurt. "Hey, you around?" But weighted with all the unspoken questions they lack the words to ask. That message arrives at an odd hour, sent from a place of vulnerability so deep they would never admit it. It's an olive branch styled as a nonchalance, a reconnaissance mission disguised in indifference, seeking a sign that you remain an anchor in their turbulent inner sea. Through this dance of silence and shadowed return, you witness the avoidance survival mechanism in action, a pendulum swing between exerting control and pleading for connection, all conducted under the radar of conscious intent. They never intended to chase you, yet here they are, compelled by forces greater than their own will by the human need for emotional attunement they thought they'd outgrown. And as they hit send, bracing for the possibility of continued silence, they stand at a crossroads, retreat once more into isolation, or accept that to keep you, they must finally risk exposing the fear they've spent a lifetime denying. Avoidants construct distance like an invisible armor, to shield themselves from emotional demands they fear will engulf them. When they hold the reins, they lean back against this passive wall of silence, watching you approach only to retreat again, maintaining a sense of safety in a relationship where they never have to expose their heart. But when you, the one who understood their fear most deeply, stop closing that gap for them, when you steadfastly let them feel the full length of the chasm they've created, they lose that control. Like a discarded compass, they flounder in the strategy they once relied upon. The farther I pull away, the safer I feel. Now, the void you've left behind has become a tolling bell, awakening parts of their brain that had fallen silent, triggering a survival response in the nervous system that polyvagal theory describes as isolated defense, an invisible loop where the autonomic system screams danger. They may not realize it, but in your silence, even the faintest signals, a single-story view or a casual like, become proof that you remain beyond their fortress, stirring a violent inner storm. According to Bowlby's attachment theory, their distance equals safety tactic allowed them to harness security by suppressing needs for closeness. Yet when your connection is no longer interrupted by your own withdrawals, they're forced to confront the tidal wave of emotion without the lifesaver of your trust. This is the breaking the emotional control pattern, dismantling the mechanism that once ran through the core of their psyche, rendering every old program useless. Most dangerous of all, this reverse silence reopens the abandonment wound they thought long since stitched. That haunting question, "Did I really push them away for good?" repeats like a wordless ocean hymn. It's not just theoretical. It seeps into every cell, activating the amygdala to flood cortisol, sending their heart racing, their palms sweating, their voice choking back the words that never surface. When that old wound resurfaces, they lose more than a person. They lose faith in their own capacity to be loved. The scared child inside, once left alone in a dark living room while parents climbed into the car and drove off, returns to the forefront with its scream. Will anyone ever fight for me? Doubt attacks them. Am I too cold, too unfeeling? Did I trap them in loneliness? Those questions grant no rest, and they grant no action. In that moment of lost control, they endure a fiercer inner battle than any emotional pursuit. Should they run again, or should they knock on your door one last time? Avoidants often choose to delay, postponing a decision, and sometimes repeating the self-sabotage by ignoring messages or hiding their feelings behind emotionless icons, as though that could starve the fear within. Yet despite every resistance, part of them yearns for a final victory over their wound. They dream of a chance to be healed, to reclaim that fragile self. When that chance arrives, a trembling midnight call, a tentative message asking, "Hey, are you there?" It carries both hope and terror. Hope that you still exist somewhere, still hold a corner of your heart for them. Fear that their olive branch will be rejected and their loneliness magnified. Their emotion in that instant is so overwhelming, they'll remember it forever. The scent of waking in the night to type those words, the sight of their trembling question on your screen, the ragged inhale as they wait for your reply. Behind that cold facade, they long to mend the bond with you, not only to save themselves from the abyss, but to prove to themselves, I can be loved, I can be understood. And if you answer even with a simple, I'm here, they will feel that as a shaft of light slicing through a crack in their heart, soothing the abandonment wound and granting hope for a new journey, where distance is no longer a permanent wall, but a space just wide enough for two to breathe. In the next section, we'll explore how they begin to learn to open their heart again, and how your presence as the person who understood them best can become the catalyst for a safer relationship, one where the armor of distance slowly gives way to a new garment called trust. As you remain silent, a profound shift unfolds in the avoidant's inner landscape, a shift so subtle that it almost slips past conscious awareness, yet so seismic it fractures their bedrock assumptions about intimacy. Up until now, they believed themselves to be the authors of every departure, the directors of every retreat. They prided themselves on wielding silence as a tool, a scalpel to carve out exactly as much emotional space as they needed, leaving you scrambling to fill in the void with reassurances. But now, they find themselves staring into a silence that is not theirs to command. It arrives not as a calculated withdrawal, but as an unyielding boundary you draw around your own heart, a boundary designed to protect your needs rather than punish theirs. In that distinction lies the shock. Their handcrafted script has been torn away, leaving them cast in a role they never auditioned for, the role of the one left behind. Picture the avoidant pacing, heart pounding, as they awaken to the realization that you are no longer an audience to their performance of detachment. Instead of controlling the tempo of connection, they are stranded in a soundless auditorium, spotlighted and exposed. The familiar safety net of your eventual approach has vanished, and with it goes their illusion of mastery over the relational dance. They aren't running again. They are abandoned by their own expectation of you. And that paradox cuts deeper than any fear of intimacy ever could. It's one thing to prepare yourself to be misunderstood, to brace for the moment you close the door. It's another entirely to confront an open door that you can no longer will shut, to feel the echo of your own solitude in the hollow chambers of your chest. In this new light, silence stops being a tactic and becomes a truth teller. It announces that your emotional world is self-governing, that your worth does not depend on their compliance with unspoken rules. The avoidant's prior faith, I can disappear and you will swoop back in to rescue me, crumbles like ancient mortar. For the first time, they glimpse your departure as a message of self-respect rather than a challenge to their dominance. The boundary you maintain is not a bluff to test their loyalty. It is the embodiment of your conviction that no relationship, however cherished, should cost you your integrity. This revelation shakes the avoidant to their core because it confronts their deepest, most guarded fear, that the very existence of a relationship is contingent upon their emotional whims. They've always believed that the only way to keep someone close was to keep them uncertain. They equated unpredictability with control and distance with independence. But your silence reveals the lie underneath distance can equally provoke connection or annihilation, depending on who wields it and why. And in seeing you choose yourself, they begin to understand that intimacy is not a currency they can hoard or spend. It is a shared landscape that only flourishes when both partners hold mutual boundaries. Emotion floods in where strategy once ran. Each forgotten text, each unanswered call, becomes an invitation for them to sit with their own disappointment and restlessness rather than anesthesia of escape. They feel the thrum of longing as it courses through their body, a visceral pulse that no amount of rationalization can quiet. Memories ripple through their mind, your laughter on a rainy afternoon, the gentle press of your hand on theirs, the way you lingered in their arms without insisting on words. Those recollections are no longer soothed by the promise of your return. They sting with the possibility that those moments are irreplaceable. What they fear most in this moment is not losing you, it is losing themselves in a desperate pursuit to reclaim you. Because if they beg you back, they concede that they cannot survive your absence. If they remain proud, they risk watching you drift further away, unmoored and unmoved by any gesture. Neither option feels safe, and so they hover in a liminal space, torn between surrender and withdrawal. The very silence they once used as armor now mirrors back their own vulnerability. And this mirror demands acknowledgement. It compels them to reckon with the truth that their emotional survival depends not on controlling distance, but on embracing connection with all its risks, messiness, and potential for growth. During late nights, when the hush of the world amplifies every thump of their heart, they may finally whisper your name not as a challenge, but as a confession. They might text you a line that carries the weight of 1,000 unspoken thanks. I understand now. In that admission lies the raw power of your silence. It has taught them more about love and boundaries than any amount of proximity ever could. You did not chase them to prove a point. You stepped back to honor your own. In doing so, you offered them the greatest gift of all, a chance to step forward into a relationship that begins not from fear, but from mutual respect. And so, this new perspective on silence becomes a crucible for transformation. It shows the avoidant that the opposite of connection is not distance, but disconnection from one's own needs and from the reality of interdependence. By refusing to fill the void they created, you have unveiled the fine line between turning away and letting go, between tactical retreat and genuine self-preservation. You have demonstrated that boundaries are not walls to keep love out, but guardrails that guide it home. For the first time, they glimpse a path forward where both partners stand their ground and yet stand together. In that vision lies the promise of a relationship reborn, one where silence is no longer a weapon, but a shared space of reflection, healing, and true presence. Your silence is not punishment, it is proof of your growth. Those simple words carry the weight of the journey. You've walked the journey of overcoming the fear of abandonment, resisting the urge to apologize or explain just to stave off loneliness, and mastering the impulse to chase someone at the expense of your own peace. You did not choose silence as a tactic to teach them a lesson. You did so because you could no longer betray your own emotional truth. You could no longer shrink yourself to fill someone else's uncertainty or entrust your worth to someone unwilling to meet your needs. In that silence lies the strength of uncompromising choice. It holds your determination not to step backward even when your heart ached, when memories of tenderly supporting them threatened to bring tears. It testifies that you have learned to love yourself, to honor the parts of you that demand safety and respect. This is true growth, not perfection, but the courage to protect your most vulnerable places, even if it means holding your peace amid swirling doubt and hope. And if they are truly ready to heal, they will return not to rebuild what broke, but to build something different. They will come back bearing scars that tell stories of survival, scars honored as reminders of why connection matters. They will ask not merely, "Are you okay?" but "How can I be here for you?" They will not attempt to close the distance with hollow promises, but will reach out with steady actions, sincere apologies, and real commitments to change. In their return, your relationship transforms from a tug-of-war between closeness and distance into a shared path where both of you stand upright. No one contorts to fit the other's mold. But if they cannot move past their deepest fears, if they continue to ignore or withdraw, then your silence becomes the most precious gift you can give yourself. A gift wrapped in courage and self-respect, affirming that you deserve more than hollow gestures and half-hearted attempts. It is the permission slip to let go, so you need not spin endlessly in cycles of doubt, asking yourself, do they really care? This gift declares that you deserve someone who chooses you fully and openly, not someone for whom you remain an unfinished project. Remember, your silence may create distance, but it also opens space to fill with what truly nourishes your soul, self, love, your passions, and relationships that honor and uplift you. By pausing the messages and the explanations, you do not become cold, you gain clarity. You see who truly values you and who only retreats when confronted with your authentic self. In the whirlwind of an avoidant dynamic, silence can awaken a fresh kind of loneliness, but it also propels your growth within that solitude. You learn not to fear quiet moments and to discover your worth in the cadence of your own breath. When you find peace within that stillness, you have already succeeded success in building a firm foundation for whatever love lies ahead, whether or not they return. Ultimately, your silence is not a torch burning the past. It is a beacon lighting the way forward. It illuminates the path you choose, a path of confidence, dignity, and compassion. And whoever follows, whether it is the avoidant who finally honors boundaries, or simply yourself, exploring a brighter horizon. Each step marks a new chapter, rich with hope and meaning far beyond any promise that once faded. When your silence speaks, listen closely to its echo, for it is the truest voice guiding you toward genuine happiness. In the quiet aftermath of your own courageous pause, when you have discovered that true strength lies in the spaces you refuse to fill, it can help to turn to a timeless guide on love, as an art rather than a mere feeling. In his classic work, The Art of Loving, Erich Fromm invites us to see love not as something we fall into, but as a practice we cultivate through discipline, concentration, patience, and above all, the courage to confront ourselves. Fromm reminds us that to love well, we must first learn to love ourselves, to cultivate what he calls the capacity for objectivity, so that we can see both ourselves and another clearly, without projection or fantasy. In the chapters where he explores care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge as the 4 pillars of love, we recognize echoes of your decision to remain silent. That silence was not the absence of feeling, but the assertion of self-respect, the most fundamental gesture of care you can offer your own heart. Just as Fromm describes the active dimension of love, to love someone is to show them that they are unique, that they matter. Your boundary becomes an offering of truth rather than a punishment. You show yourself, and indirectly your avoidant partner, that emotional health depends on authenticity more than proximity. You demonstrate that only by daring to be alone can you bring your full self into a relationship. Fromm's insistence that love is an act of giving rather than taking resonates here. Your quiet is a gift of space for both you and them to grow, to reflect, and to learn how to receive rather than merely protect. In The Art of Loving, Fromm also warns against the illusion that love is something we possess, or that can be secured by controlling another's behavior. Love is the only sane and satisfactory answer to the problem of human existence, he writes. And yet it is rooted in freedom, freedom from fear, freedom from compulsion, freedom from the desperate clinging that ultimately chokes genuine connection. When you refuse to chase or explain, you are embodying that principle. You are practicing freedom, inviting both yourself and your partner to move from a stance of deficiency, I need you to save me, into one of abundance. I choose you freely and without expectation of rescue. Fromm's exploration of the maturity required for love, what he calls active love, parallels the transformation initiated by your silence. He argues that many of us approach love with an infantile dependency, expecting the beloved to fill our gaps and assuage our worries. But true maturity emerges when we acknowledge that no one else can make us whole. By holding your boundary, you modeled that maturity. You showed that your well-being is not contingent upon another's actions, that you can carry your own completeness into a relationship, and that you will not compromise your integrity for the sake of avoiding discomfort. Yet Fromm offers more than a theory. He offers hope. He insists that anyone can learn to love and that doing so is an ethical imperative, a practice that can transform the world one relationship at a time. His chapters on the love of God, brotherly love, motherly love, and erotic love reveal how the principles of care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge apply across every form of human connection. You see, your willingness to stay silent until your needs were met was not cold or callous. It was an act of responsibility to the highest standard responsibility to yourself, to your partner, and to the relationship itself. In that spirit, Fromm's perspective encourages us to believe in love no matter what, to understand that every setback, every moment of silence, even every heartbreak, is an invitation to deepen our understanding of what it means to love. He teaches that love must be learned and relearned throughout our lives, and that it requires constant self-examination and willful effort. If your partner returns after your silence, they return not to replicate past mistakes, but to engage in a new kind of loving one grounded in the shared values of respect and freedom. And if they do not return, Fromm's wisdom still comforts us. Love's highest lessons are not confined to a single person or a single outcome. Love opens us to the beauty of human connection in all its forms, from the friendships that nourish our spirits to the acts of compassion we extend to strangers. So let your silence be both your shield and your doorway. Let it be the living proof that you have learned the art of loving yourself first, that you appreciate your own value enough to demand mutual respect, and trust that love, true love, the kind Fromm describes as the only remedy to existential loneliness, will find you where you are. Even if your avoidant partner never returns, the space you create will be filled by new opportunities to love differently, to set healthier boundaries, and to approach every relationship as a sacred practice. Believe in love unfailingly, not because it guarantees comfort, but because it calls us to grow, to heal, and to choose connection even when we tremble. In this way, the silence you hold today seeds the capacity for a richer, more mature love tomorrow, one that honors both your solitude and your desire to share your life fully. Ultimately, the journey we've explored together is a map guiding us from the loneliness of abandonment to the deepest freedom, the freedom to be respected, the freedom to be understood, and above all, the freedom to love ourselves. From the moment you grasped reality, realizing that silence is not a weapon, but a boundary to the instant you touched the avoidant's heart, forcing them to confront their own fear of rejection, it has all led to one destination: mature love. This is not a love that wavers with every surge of anger or fear. It is a foundation built brick by brick from self-awareness and the cracked armor of old defenses. You have seen, with both mind and heart, how the avoidant fights fiercely to regain control, only to discover that control does not bring safety, but only deeper distance. And you have witnessed how, when that distance is torn open by deliberate silence, a genuine opportunity for healing begins to emerge. In life, many crave a rock-solid relationship but tremble at the thought of playing the one who waits, the calm, strong presence. They fear losing the right to lead, fear exposing the broken pieces within. You were once like that. You longed for someone, always there, only to realize that there is meaningless if your own heart is in pieces. So you chose silence not to punish, but to free yourself from the addiction to apologies or pleas. In that choice, you reaffirmed your core truth. Love is not a beacon you chase endlessly, but an anchor that holds you steady when life's seas grow rough. Remember Erich Fromm's lesson. Love is an art that demands practice, a journey of giving rather than taking. You practice that with every moment of silence, every step back you took to make space for both yourself and them. You gave respect, patience, and faith in growth, and in return, if they come back, they will bring a heart that knows how to cherish, a person ready to take responsibility rather than run away. If they do not return, do not despair. That is the final responsibility you give yourself. No longer waiting for someone to stunt your growth. Your silence will become fertile soil for new joys, for brighter relationships, and for discovering parts of yourself hidden beneath anxiety. This is proof that you can love deeply and yet stand firm when you cannot love the person you once hoped for. Most importantly, always believe in the power of love. No matter how many times you fall and break, each experience becomes a building block for learning to give and receive love rightly. Trust that at the end of the path of silence, a vast emotional landscape awaits your exploration with sincere hearts, ready to match your breath and treasure every moment of peace. This is not merely advice, but a declaration. You deserve to be loved, you deserve to be understood, and you deserve a love that is free, unburdened, and fearless. Hold this moment of silence like a lantern of clarity, so that every step you take next is steady and full of hope. Whatever journey lies ahead, you have equipped yourself with the most precious tool, the ability to love yourself, to give without expecting, and to believe that love is always the answer to every loneliness.